Shut up and sit down.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 148 of the Fitness Devil podcast. It's the countdown. We didn't actually announce this on air yet. I post on my social media, but we are going to episode 150. So we have two more after this. And then Dean is going to be focusing on his side project, The Pump, with our friend Jeb Johnston. And he's going to be so busy with all those other projects. So I'm taking this over solo, and although I haven't settled on a name yet, we'll be renaming it, but it's the same download stream, so you'll be uninterrupted. So if you have any questions about that, shoot me a message on my Instagram or Facebook. But far more important, we have a guest that I've actually reached out to quite a while ago, and I've been following and hearing on podcasts, but we're never able to make scheduling work then. But we've got Roger Lawson, better known as Rog Law in our community. And you can't see him, but he's raising his arms in the air.
He has no shirt on, which is like, I appreciate
no shirt on.
Trademark.
Sure. And yeah. Rog has been a part of Mark Fisher Fitness for many years. Originally, once upon a time, interning at Christie Sports Performance and other gyms in between. But if you guys don't yet know Rog, he's one of the more animated, sweet, just awesome humans that our industry has. And he's someone that we really couldn't go without having on here because he's someone that you do really need to know about. So welcome, Rog.
Oh, look at you with the great intros.
It's sweet. He
I
said
love
sweet.
that.
He's never said sweet ever. So that's, I don't know. You better be good.
I appreciate that. And also, since they can't see, y'all are jacked. I didn't realize how not jacked I was.
That's good.
Until this is perfect.
Pete Dupuis,
Thanks for having me on.
A mutual friend, obviously, but he was like, yeah, you guys, like, there's some podcasts, I won't sue everyone. But he's like, you guys look like you lift, which is like a plus in this industry. I was like, yeah. We do.
Yeah. So just for context, if anybody's not familiar with it, so I'm 6'2" and usually fluctuate between 255 and 260, relatively lean. Dean, what are you? You're about 6'2" and usually walk around between 220 and 230.
I'm 6 foot. And I'm
you're only 6. I thought you were
30 right now. Sometimes 240.
But Dean is actually infinitely stronger than me. Like Dean's best lifts, I think you've got a paused 440 competition bench press, and you've like deadlifted over 7 or some crazy shit like that.
Not anymore. I'm 32. We're talking about like peaks and valleys. Like I'm on the way down.
We're big dudes, but we brought you on here to talk about you. So obviously, I wanted
to talk about us the whole time. Like screw this
let's
guy.
talk about us. First of all, I wanted to find out what you've been up to lately because, all the stuff that's going on in our universe, it's hard to keep track of just where everybody is. I know that based in New York and Mark Fisher Fitness, you guys haven't had the chance to reopen yet, but I also want to see what you've been doing with your personal work, personal brand, and how you are.
Man, this is it's very interesting times. I did not think it would continue to go on for this long, but here we are. So, obviously we're not open now. Hopefully we open soon, but for the most part, I've just been enjoying the downtime as much as I can. And really, because this is the longest I've not worked in a long time. So, and this hopefully will be the longest that I don't work again. So I'm really just soaking it in, reading. I'm doing a lot of running these days, which is, that's new to me.
Is it good? Some people go either way. Like I actually liked running when I did it.
Mm-hmm. I actually enjoy it as long as I don't go too fast, as long as I stay in that zone 2 life. So, and it helps me get outside and just see the neighborhood, which I rarely did before because, as you know, in New York, it's just go, go, go all the time. So I was either on my way to work, leaving work, going to a show, going to jiu-jitsu, coming home. So now I actually get to see the city. It feels kind of like being a tourist again to a certain degree.
Mentioning jiu-jitsu, do you actually know our friend Jeb Johnston? Because he's a big jiu-jitsu guy out of New York too.
No.
I mean, New York is this monstrous place, obviously, but it's the fitness industry which tends to be on the smaller side. So, oh man, well,
is he he trains out of New York?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask him where he trains right now, and I'll get
okay.
He's very Brooklyn in his identity, so I don't know where he is located exactly. But I've hung out with Jeb a bunch of times in travels to. Usually it's a Kansas City Fitness Summit where I like. That's where I met
called
Mark
the New York
Fisher.
info, though.
That's where I met Pete Dupuis and how I know all these people.
You guys are crazy.
I'm sad that I didn't get to go while y'all were there.
I brought Dean one year, and so he linked up with the Stronger You people and Mike T. Nelson, and then of course your shit blew up with him. So Dean's involved with Stronger You in a big way. And
Nice.
honestly, those events, like we haven't talked about it in a little while, and sadly it was canceled this year. And now we don't even know if there's going to be one next year. They just made an announcement. They're just not sure.
Yeah.
But God, what a run it's been. And I've got a lot of value out of that. So once we can get back to flying around, because we're in Canada and right now, like the US, it's like the running joke. It's like living above a meth lab. And there's some wild shit going on down there. So
Let's not make fun of him because he's in the meth lab. Like New York is like,
it's okay to be in the meth lab. We're actually coming out of the meth lab.
Yeah.
And the other parts of the country are now realizing they're a bigger meth lab.
Yeah, you guys realize drugs are bad now.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like what's this meth stuff? And then it's kind of just doing its thing. Okay, actually, I wanted to see because like we had a lot of people on, and we're talking about education, all this stuff, but we talked about it like during. What have you been like learning? Because I know like there's a lot of probably fitness professionals in the same boat, and not all of them. I don't want to say they're not taking advantage of it, but the people that are kind of like, I want to call it leveling up, but it sounds really like salesy. What have you been like doing that like you think is going to help on the back end of this thing?
Just really learning about learning to a degree, like how to best create an environment for learning. Because I think at the end of the day, that's what we're like. I don't want the clients that I have to be dependent on me for the rest of their lives, because that I'd feel disingenuous if like after 5 years of work with me or 3 years, they feel like they have to keep going and they don't feel like they have enough tools and knowledge to continue forward on their own, because otherwise it's just a cycle. And that's not really, to me, it's not very empowering to them. And also my interest may go beyond fitness at some point too, in terms of profession. And I don't want to feel like, oh, I just left you by the side of the road alone and it's raining, and you got your thumb out and no one's picking you up and you just feel lost, So lots of learning about how to learn. Also, I've just been really diving deeper into this personal interest. So lots of jujitsu, fundamental type or like principle type learning. So I haven't gotten to the point where I make a dummy out of pillows and a hoodie yet. I don't think I'll get to that point, but just learning how to break the concepts down and explain them to myself in a way that's understandable. And I think that directly applies to coaching, because especially in like a group environment like Mark Fisher Fitness, we don't have time to pull people aside and talk with them for 5 minutes in the middle of a 14-person class. We just can't happen. We need to be succinct. Yeah.
Like last podcast, we had John Berardi on, and like it kind of got off track, but we were talking about like the Mandalorian. But long story short is the principle-based stuff. You can see it in everything, whether it's marketing, whether it's the Mandalorian, whether it's writing or fitness. It's kind of, it ends up being the same shit. But if you're isolated in fitness, you only see it through that one lens, and it's hard to appreciate what those principles are when you're kind of just stuck in the one thing.
And this ties into what you were just saying too. And funny enough, John Berardi as well was talking to us about some of his interests in terms of, I think it was real estate and stuff that's grown beyond, pure fitness industry stuff, as he sort of stepped away from PN because they've sold it and he's more of a figurehead now. And you mentioned yourself the possibility of leaving and going beyond the fitness industry. And I think that's sort of an interesting thought. I'll explain where I'm going with this. I think there's a lot of people who see themselves as very much lifers in the fitness industry and they're committed to it. And I think there's other people who see, their stop along the way in the fitness industry as something transient, but those people don't tend to enter our space where we all are. But, you're someone who's built a very good reputation in our world and worked for reputable organizations, but here you are mentioning the possibility of growing beyond it. So what's the thought process in exploring the possibility of one day leaving the fitness industry?
It's a great question. So and I necessarily may not be fully leaving the fitness industry, maybe just shifting in terms of what I do, because I do appreciate fitness as a vehicle for like growth, which is ultimately what like got me hooked on that. It's less about like the numbers. It used to be about the numbers. And then I realized, there's only so high that I'm realistically going to go with the effort I'm going to put in and my genetics. And then it became about something a little deeper in terms of just how can I use this as a vehicle for personal growth? How can I help the people I interact with to think about fitness in a different way? So it's not necessarily, now that we're talking about it, leaving fully, but I don't want to be, let's say 50 in the same, like training clients all the time because I would love to spend time with my family and my wife and hopefully a child one day. So, and I know this industry is not the best at, people really like training in the morning. They really like training at night. And that's kind of how it is. So.
Well, it's interesting because you pretty much had pretty good role models, I would say. Like even at MFF, like I would say Mark's kind of done that a little bit, and even with Cressy, like if you look at the three, I guess with Tony, like and where they've gone, there is more, and you've seen it like firsthand. Like they're all of them aren't training outside of Pete. Pete's not really training, but they're not training till they're 50. They're still training, but they also have other stuff.
They're business owners, and some of these guys, like Mark Fisher has been doing consulting and speaking in the business world. So he's expanded beyond it. So I suppose it's not so much leaving the fitness industry, it's using core competency within the fitness industry to grow into a broader space. I think you see that in other people. Like Luca Hocevar, certainly, he does a lot of other business stuff and again, in real estate stuff outside of just being a gym owner. His gym ownership is his first love. And so when I suppose you think about it, there's a lot of people who are growing and, like Dean said, leveling up. You look at a guy like Martin Rooney, who's still in a lot of ways very much in the trenches of helping people, but he's grown a business empire and he's an author too. So I suppose that makes a lot of sense. You don't necessarily have to, entirely exit the fitness industry and go into an entirely different space, but there are ways to grow beyond the coaching the client in person. And it's not to say that has to be the goal. I like doing it, and I can foresee me probably being 7 years old, working with some clients on the gym floor, and I hope I'm doing other stuff along with it.
We talk about lifers. Andrew's actually you almost said you said 50, and I'm like trying to count how many years Andrew's away from that. But Andrew's totally going to be 50 in training.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm 42, right? So that's no big
so I
deal
was
to me,
like,
right?
Raj, just hold back.
I was thinking 90. I should have said 90. I think it would be 97.
Yeah, so we don't offend anyone because
right.
Had who do we have? Vince.
Oh God, if anybody's getting offended, I mean, just no. I'm not getting on that thing, but people are a little too easily offended with shit like that. We had Susan Nieberdahl on here recently, and Susan's like, shit, she's 60 and still banging out like weighted chin-ups and stuff like that, and doing her coaching is primarily online space, but you don't age out of this industry if you don't want to.
Right.
Charles
and that's
Staley
what's beautiful
still,
about it.
Dude is still training people in writing, right? And he's influential.
Yeah, he was one of the first books I ever got. I had his ebook and I printed it out, and it was like 300 pages.
Which one?
Something. It was an ebook. I can't remember the name. Something with athlete in the title. But it had escalating density training in it and all sorts of workouts. And boy, I carry that thing around with me all the time.
So actually, there's a good question. It's more to Dean's question, but the specifics of some of the stuff you've been reading, in particular, any resources on being a better coach or trainer? Because I've been doing the same thing during this as well. I've been working a lot, but I went and got Mike Boyle's functional training book, which is unbelievable.
I really didn't read that. That's the book.
It's crazy, but what's funny is, and I'll sort of explain this because I've been pushing people to go grab books like this, or I'm reading Bompa's periodization, which I didn't know that much about outside of the energy system stuff. But with Mike Boyles, I'm like, shit, I actually know most of this. And I'm thinking where the fuck did I learn all this stuff? Because I pieced it together watching YouTube videos and podcasts and whatever. And I'm realizing actually a lot of it probably came from Dean Somerset, because I did it a massive amount of Dean's coursework because I work for the same company as him. So I got most of it for free. Right.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh shit, man, I know all this crap. I was like, fuck, I learned that from Dean.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So you pick this stuff up along the way. It's still a great book. And honestly, I think everybody should read it.
Yeah.
So what about you?
There's so many. All right. At least personally for me, in terms of my interests, definitely Mike Boyle's book was a fundamental one, especially at the time when I was coming up, because that was about 2009 when I finished my internship. Also, Scott Abel, I love his stuff. He was also someone I learned from, not directly, but just purchasing his books and reading his article. He used to be on the Fitcast back in the day with Kevin. So I paid for the subscription. I got a lot of his interviews, which is very helpful. But one book in particular I would recommend is the Beyond Metabolism. And it's an easier read. It's like $5 on Amazon, and it gives people a little bit of a I'd say a different approach than one that we tend to find ourselves in, because a lot of the industry kind of defaults to calorie counting. I've noticed, at least it used to be. I'm kind of in the industry, but not like I'm in it in terms of where I work and I'm focused on that. But in terms of online, I'm kind of following my own interests. But that is, I think, is a really good book to people to start with, just because it helps give you a different picture in terms of what is possible, how to achieve the results you want, especially if it's like fat loss, without going the default route if that isn't working for you, for sure.
I think that's the problem with a lot of, I don't want to call, oh, it's fucking evidence-based, but like a lot of that stuff, like you said, if you're not kind of in that crowd, there's other ways to skin the cat that don't necessarily reside in this specific way, but that gets lost when the popular thing, like you said, now it's calorie counting. And I would say it's still, that is still the popular thing. Like that's where you go to. And it is interesting to see like that doesn't, we don't evolve beyond that. Which is generally the long-term solutions aren't that thing. Like that's kind of the starting point.
Right. And
should be.
And that's, I think so too. A lot of people get stuck at I guess a beginner phase. Wherever you start is where you start, but there's a lot of value in moving beyond that if you find that it's taking up more time than it should and from your life, like mentally taxing you. If you're avoiding like social interactions because of the food there and you don't know how to control it, you know, it becomes a thing of you're a slave to your diet as opposed to just living your life with food coming in on the side too. Another book I want to mention before I forget, Christian Thibodeau, Theory and Application of Modern Strength Training, Strength and Power Methods. Such a good book. It's
we've had Christian on a couple times, and I love Christian. He's fun to talk to, and he's a deep thinker on this stuff. And I like Christian because it's like I don't agree with every single thing that Christian says, but then again, if I look across the industry and people I like Lane Norton as one of my more influential figures when it comes to nutrition stuff, and I don't agree with everything Lane says. And that's not to say that, you know, me without the advanced degree in nutrition and him with the advanced degree in nutrition, that I somehow am qualified to question that stuff. But you expose yourself to enough resources across the industry, and you know, I think it doesn't have to be all or nothing with someone. I think we've gotten into trouble with guru worship for sure in our industry. And then, you know, let's use a good example. And you know, people don't, it's a little taboo to talk about him right now, but let's look at Brett Contreras, right? Brett is one of the people who he's exploded the glute training world, and there's a ton of great information there, but there may be a bit of stuff that he's gone all in on that's been challenged with some credible evidence that, you know, he's sort of staying in his belief system. And so I think there's a lot you can learn, but at the same time, I think there's, you know, don't get just married to one person's ideas exclusively.
That's the greater conversation though, of like it was with John, and I know we were talking about John, if we bring up John again, but like, if you just follow everything that, like, let's say Brett does, or even Mark Fisher, then you're just a shittier version of Mark Fisher, and you kind of let go of the thing that makes you, like, you would basically, you know what I mean? Like, it's fine. It's just that you're then pigeonholed to that thing, as opposed to exposing yourself. And the greater thing of education and learning all this other stuff is so you can kind of adopt things and evolve personally, because you don't want to be, well, maybe you want to be Mark. I don't know.
No
one could be Mark.
I don't want to be Mark.
Hair's too
no
good.
one could be Mark.
If they tried, it would be so awkward.
Yeah.
When I first met him, I realized
your version of that. Like, it would be awkward because you're not that. You know what I mean? You're Raj. You learn from Mark's. Actually, you don't have the tones a lot of the Mark Fisher. Like, you're not as animated. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'm sure you could be. You just know how to turn it off, which is,
it makes me tired.
Like, Harold could not turn it off. He had the Mark. Like, it was, I was like, damn. Like,
the entire crew, from what, like, another guy, Brian Patrick Murphy, who I've heard a fair bit on podcasts too. Like, Brian just comes off as just the nicest guy, but he seems like he's just this nonstop authentic empathy and just good energy too. So it's got to be infectious to be around people like that. What is that like, being in an environment where you have both people that exude all this stuff, but also all these high energy people? Is it like, do you pick up on it and does it lift you up, or is it just exhausting when you get out of there at the end of the day?
It's both. Because this is my genuine personality, so I'm a good fit for that type of environment. But also when you're doing it regularly, at least for me, you know, at the end of the day, I'm glad that I did it. I'm also tired and I'm ready to not talk and just read books and sit quietly, just in a room and just stare out the window. So it's a good balance of recharging and, you know, giving the energy, because I found that if I didn't have that time, I would just burn out way faster than if I don't have that, I would burn out. Otherwise, if I have that recharge time, I'm totally fine going to those peaks and valleys.
I think you're a really good example of this conversation about finding the right place for you, the right gym, right fit, because Mark Fisher Fitness just does seem to be, and I know this is a topic of conversation in podcasts you've done elsewhere about your time at Cressy's versus Mark Fisher Fitness. So what are your thoughts on people finding the right vehicle for them, the right venue?
Or like, how do they even?
Yeah, and how
it's
do
hard for anyone coming up to know where they fit.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, some of it's most of it's trial and error, but you can cut a lot of that down to a bit of a minimum if you kind of understand your temperament and your personality. Like if you go into a place and you can't see yourself there, like the only reason I took the job, because I was working exclusively online and I was traveling, but the only reason I took the job at MFF is because I love those people so much, and the environment was a good fit. If it weren't, like if it was not a good fit, even though I love them, I'm like, I'm okay, I'm good. I don't, because I was fine. I was traveling. I was in like Thailand for a year working, and that's an easy place to stay, especially financially. But in terms of really just finding a good fit for yourself, I would just spend more time with yourself and learn what's important to you and try to find that in a place. I wouldn't try to fit yourself to a place, because you can only maintain that for so long before your true self or true inclinations start to break through, and then you're just pissed that you sold yourself out.
That's
I
that
could see that
principle
also.
Sorry, you guys.
I was going to say, I could see that also taxing someone's energy, and anything that taxes your mental energy is going to mean you have less mental energy for your clients and for the investment in your own personal development. I remember my old gym facility, a lot of good came of it. I've got a ton of friends, tons of great relationships, tons of client relationships and referrals network over the years. But as time went on, it was extremely taxing to be in that environment due to some of the ethical and moral and behavioral issues that were going on with some of the other staff and management, and to the point where eventually I had to leave and set out on my own. I also am, like you say, to knowing your temperament, I'm a very disagreeable person in my nature around seeing lack of professionalism in particular in the space I'm in. So I'm someone who really does need to go work for myself. Whereas like Dean, far more agreeable than I, fits in really well into a company like Stronger You, where he's a part of this community. I have my relationships across the industry, but if I were forced to, be constantly interactive with a community of other people, I would find that very difficult to manage. So I know that for me, I have to just kind of strike it on my own.
But that goes back to that principle-based approach, like kind of narrowing down what's important. The reason why we're bringing this up is because I think that there's a lot of people in the position that you probably were at the beginning, going through all this stage, and it's really hard to know your principles and your values when you're 21, 22. I mean, I'm sure everyone's different, but I sure as hell didn't know shit till like 2 years ago, and I'm still refining it. I'm 32 now, so it's
100%.
hard.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to experience, because you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And then I think the key is to, like, once you know it, just really know it, instead of like, oh, no, it's actually different. Don't try to force yourself to change, like to go against your nature, if that's truly not who you are or who you really want to spend the rest of your life trying to become. Like, if you're not committed to becoming that person, it's just gonna, like you were just saying a bit ago, Andrew, it's just gonna wear you out. It's gonna tire you out, and it's kind of just defeats the purpose. It's not fun at that point.
When you got to make that change too, I think, like, even if you look at the situation currently, like we're splitting up podcasts and all this stuff, but like, and I've literally rebranded my other one that I'm splitting off to do, but it was just like, when it's like, it's that sunk cost here. You could just keep going, but like, it never pays off. You might as well just make the change. And yeah, it's scary and yeah, it's hard, but a lot of us aren't putting millions of dollars on the line. It's like, fuck this fucking,
Right.
It's hard to change a podcast or a job. It's different when you're PN. Like you can't change your name to John Berardi's company when everyone knows PN. But I think at certain stages when you're developing that, there's no loss in kind of going with your gut on a lot of things, unless you're getting on the street, then don't listen to that.
That's funny because Pete Dupuis constantly bemoans the fact that they named it after Eric.
They can't do it.
And it had some benefits in the early years. He acknowledges that, but I think he always tells people, do not name it after yourself. And I think if he had his time back, he would have gone and called it something else.
Oh, 100%. Because like if he's not there, people come all the time. Even when I was there, if he wasn't there, for some reason, people are like, is Eric here? Can I train with Eric? He's Cressy. He's on the net. It's hard to get away from that.
He's always telling these stories. He's always telling these stories about how, like, some parent comes in with 11 or 12-year-old kid. It's like, oh yeah, my kid is, the next big superstar for the major leagues. And, I want him to train with Eric. And Pete's got to explain. It's like, well, actually Eric's in Florida and he works with this population, but we have all these amazing coaches. And the person's like, no, I want my kid to work with Eric. My kid is special.
$1,000 an hour and Eric will train your kid personally.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think your kid needs that at this point.
Well, that's hard though. Like, and I guess that comes with the whole branding thing. But it's like that is the inadvertent problem of that process too. Is like because it's hard for them to change that now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you guys have the same thing. You guys have the same thing at Mark Fisher Fitness. How often does someone come in and be like, "Hey, man, I want to train with Mark"?
It's cool. It's cool that because we had two different locations. We had the Bowery location, which unfortunately just closed, and then the Hell's Kitchen. So MFF started from Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah.
And that was, people would often come in there wanting to train with Mark or asking about Mark. But at Bowery, it was so far removed from the original MFF that a lot of people didn't even know who Mark was. Like if Mark walked in, they'd know he was Mark. Maybe they'd know he was a person of importance because he was on the window in a unitard, but that was about it. They may not know he's actually the owner. So it's interesting. Yeah, speaking of my own, like if I wanted to build something anew, I would not just have my name, or unless unless like kind of like Mark Manson. I enjoy the way he does it because that's him. So if I were to do something outside the fitness industry or within it, but also branching out to different other aspects, that'd be something to
good last
consider.
name though. You could like do it, like lay down the law. Like there's so many law like things you could put into that like you would have to use your last name, but then make it like a thing.
Yeah.
We don't get that. Like I have Guido, so I can do like the Italian.
I think
Coates is not a. That's not a. You can't do.
There's no play on words with that one. I think you can kind of split it up this way. You look at something like Precision Nutrition. If you're growing a business or something as an entity that is a little bit more than you as an individual brand, then you should probably name it something that isn't your name. I think if you're someone who is, again, an individual, you look at someone like Jordan Syatt, Jordan is Jordan and all the things that he does for the most part, except for his online mentorship thing. It's very Jordan. So Jordan can have his name on stuff, Dean Somerset and how many other people in our world are the same thing. But if you're building something physical, like Luca Hocevar, Luca's is not Luca's gym, it's Vigor Ground. Right? So I think that's kind of an easy dichotomy to figure that out. The other thing that I find with trainers who name their individual brand business, their online training, something that's not them, is they all use the most generic fucking names. And then you don't know what it is, right? Like there's tons of people in the industry. God love them. A lot of them are amazing people, but they're okay. This is
all of them.
Oh God, I can't even think of one. I know tons, and it's like it'll be like elite training performance, or it's like something like that.
Strong lifting fitness.
Yeah.
There's one and it's a buddy, whatever. He's not going to listen to this. It's like Foundations Training System. And I'm like, there's already a thing called Foundations Training. There's like 3 companies called Foundation Training. You can't use it. Fuck.
Anything training systems, you can kind of tell they were influenced by everyone else that was named training.
Like Juggernaut. We know what Juggernaut is. Like that's a big damn deal, right?
Though, you would think so. Like I named our podcast The Pump, and I'm like looking at websites. It's all like no one, for whatever reason, no one named anything The Pump.
Mind Pump.
No one.
I was going to tell you this off air. Mind Pump. Have you see?
Yeah.
Whoops.
They did it. Mind Pump.
Mind Pump Media. You've heard of Mind Pump Media.
But
Okay.
Is that like that's not a generic?
No, but it's very similar to what you guys have named your podcast.
But mine's The Pump. Like the pump is like aren't like you would think someone would.
Yeah, I know, Arnold.
No, I was just like, is that no one did it? I was like, this is awesome. Like
I liked.
Rarely.
See, you went in there and you got it early.
Yeah, but it's not early. It's fucking 2020, and like that's why I was like, I'm not that smart. So like maybe they're probably a bad name now. Like,
in 2090, people are going to be like, oh man, Dean got the Pump podcast early on.
Yeah, I'm going to sell it.
I don't know if there's really
it's hard. I actually
like
right
answer for naming anything. This is fun because look, even though you think about a name like Precision Nutrition, well, they're early in, and we now know that you say Precision Nutrition, you know what the fuck we're talking about. Renaissance periodization. These are big animals, but let's just say it's someone starting out. Renaissance is actually kind of a cool name. It's unique, but Precision Nutrition is still a fairly generic name that grew into a big brand name. So we also have that hindsight bias of already knowing what the fuck it is.
Yeah, there's lots of exceptions to the rules. Like if whoever blows up, then you're like, oh, that was a good idea. Yeah. That name, like Robertson Training Systems, you're like, okay, I know who that is.
But again, it's still got his name on it, right? And Mike Robertson. Yeah, but again, he's also one of the early people in. Right?
But iFast isn't that big. Well, but iFast is big. So I guess it is overrated. I actually like the names that aren't like I know we're making fun of like training system and stuff, but even like even naming a podcast, it was like we call it the Fitness Devil because it was just like it actually was such a bad name. But I'm like it's still not generic. So I'm like it's a win-win because it's not
kind of worked. I sort of hate it, sort of don't, but I'm like oh fuck.
But like people go through this, like we're talking about this, and I'm like I'm sure Rog has had the same problem. Like fuck, what do I call it without sounding like.
Fuck. Your name is an abbreviation anyway. Like, how did even that come to be? Right?
It's great,
lawless training.
It's fun. So I love video games.
Yeah.
All right. Have any of you played Tekken?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
A little bit.
So got Martial Law. I was like, that's a cool ass name. Bruce Lee. And I was like, all right, I'll just cut my name in half. It's easy. And it sounds cool. Like if someone were to announce it. It's just the right amount of syllables, 2 syllables. That's it.
That's a hard
literally the only consideration.
Yeah, but you would have to educate people. That's the only problem is like because like no one plays Tekken unless you're like our age and like you grew up with it, which is like
I know
you basically had no friends when that's happening.
Pretty much, just at home.
And the people that played that game generally, I'm not gonna say they're not into fitness, but they're less into fitness than say Karen.
100%. Yeah, I wasn't even into fitness back then. I was into sitting on the couch and eating honey buns,
memorizing moves on your fucking controller because there's like 100 per character.
I was more of a Street Fighter 2 and then a lot of Killer Instinct. So I never I played touch bit of Tekken, but I never got really into it.
Killer Instinct was the shit.
Yeah, I used to. Full Gore was just cheat mode anyway, and I could play with. If anyone remembers this game, Cinder and Glacius.
Yep. Same character, cool. different colors.
Similar, yeah, totally similar. Like Glacius was really just the liquid metal Terminator.
Yep.
With like Silver Surfer with Iceman in X-Men, like a little bit of all that
combo. I never thought about that.
Cinder was straight up Human Torch.
Yep. I was Jago.
Right, Jago. Yeah, he was with
the bandana and the kicking and the swords.
Yeah, he's very Ryu from from Street Fighter 2.
Yep.
It's funny. This is going totally off topic, but
you
look at these games and other games and other what is it? God damn it! I'll explain. You see these archetypes of characters.
I was just going to go here. Like,
so where I was going to go with this is if you look at, the aliens, predators, and humans, thing, we see that. That's StarCraft, right? You have your Protoss, and you have your Zerg, and you have your Terrans. And the Protoss are the predators. They absolutely are. And if you go over to Halo, then they're actually the Covenant. It's the same thing. And the Flood in Halo is the Zerg. And then if you want to go over to Starship Troopers, the Starship Trooper human Terrans, we're going to say they're wearing the helmets from the Aliens movies. Like it's actually the same prop stuff.
Oh, wow.
And then the bugs are very Flood, very Zerg-like as well. You just pay attention to this shit. So StarCraft took Like literally, if you look at the Zerg, it's like the
I
Alien
agree.
Queen.
I
Totally.
like this.
I just never
You're
tied it all
making the
together.
connections.
I was like, I just like all of them, probably because they're the same fucking story. It's kind of like that whole hero's journey. It's like why we like the same movies because they're the same movie.
It's totally the hero's journey. It's the same archetype. It's like fucking Luke Skywalker, who is one of the most annoying characters in cinematic history. I absolutely can't stand any of this. I can't stand any of this.
Robbie,
all the
you know
Skywalker
Robbie.
characters, all the male Star
Oh,
Wars Skywalker characters are annoying, whiny losers, except for like Darth during his prime. And then you have Harry Potter and like total Joseph Campbell hero's journey stuff, which is Frodo. Frodo is one of the most annoying, except for Sam. Frodo and Sam
Sam's the shit.
Annoying character. Oh, you love Sam. Okay. And anything with Sean Astin. So, but you get these archetypes. Anyway, I know we're way off track, but this shit's fun.
Fine.
I'm down for it. I'm down for it. I just want to talk with y'all.
I want to know Roger's opinion on this because maybe he thinks Frodo's cool.
You know, Frodo. I'm down with Frodo. Let me say, Star Wars. I never got into. I missed that boat, and every time I tell people my thoughts on Star Wars, they get so upset. Because I started with the ones with Jar Jar Binks and Liam Neeson. I started with those, and I was like, all right. And then I saw like 2 of the new ones. I was like, I don't really care. And then I haven't cared enough to go back and watch the originals. At some point I might, but I probably won't.
Yeah, the originals are great because Han Solo is worth it. So this is, I don't know if this will make any sense to anybody, and then we can go back onto some fitness stuff. But when you look at character archetypes in media, you're drawn to things, and the skippy little underdog, the Frodo, the Peter Parker Spider-Man, you know, they're really popular. Your Harry Potter, they're all the same sort of thing. I, on average, don't like that character. I don't identify with that character. I like your Han Solos. I like your Aragorns. I like your Hugh Jackman's Wolverines. You know, those sort of like rough around the edges anti-hero type characters. Yeah, and that's the ones that I find more engaging and I like to watch.
Because you do need that contrast. Like if it's all too good, or if they're all bad, you need some kind of in the middle to really find something. You don't need it, but it's a lot more interesting.
Yes, like some people like your Jon Snow in Game of Thrones. That's kind of a bit more the Hound and Bronn and those kind of guys, right?
Yep. I like Oberyn.
And Tormund. Like I literally everybody thinks I look like Tormund. Chad Landers brought me a Tormund shirt.
Though, dude, they're all like anti-heroes.
Actually, here,
like,
okay, see, Raj, I'm showing you guys right now my shaker cup. What is that
Giant's
shaker cup?
Milk.
Giant's milk. Someone put that sticker on my smoothie cup.
You can't say you like Tormund. If you identify Tormund, you're basically a dumbass. Like that dude is like.
He was smart. He was smart in the way he needed to be smart.
He got totally demolished.
Hey, you know, spoiler alert. Tormund survived. No, he worshipped women. He loved Brienne.
He was sexually harassed.
He adored her. He would look at her with admiration.
Man, if you did that right now,
a childlike gleam in his eye.
Man, if you ever did that to a girl at a bar, like you getting taken down hard, like staring at her, like drinking, like making sexual innuendos.
We're also talking about a fictitious barbarian here, so
you can go there.
I love it.
Like, how does
y'all are fun? I got to go back and listen to some of the other podcasts.
Well, do the Berardi one because we literally Berardi explains how he loves The Witcher and he was disappointed with The Mandalorian. So he's kind of with you with Star Wars stuff.
Okay, see?
I just don't know where we go full circle with this. Usually we tie it in. Like the Mandalorian was more of like we appreciated how it was filmed and had the different directors and you could see the expertise going into a system like that. And that's kind of how a company zoomed in. You can see excellence. I don't know where we go here.
Here's how I would tie this in because this is a conversation I've had with Jordan Side a few times. We had Robbie Farlow on, and Robbie's just a fun dude too. I mean, shit, you would know Robbie because Robbie spent.
He was at MFF. Right? Yep,
totally. So, and now he's over at Stronger You with Dean. So, it's a conversation about actually having some depth and some interests outside of fitness, and not just being a fitness robot and talking nutrition. Honestly, some of my clients have been with me. One of my clients, Teresa, she's a machine. This lady is like just on the doorstep of 60, and she can do 100-pound barbell lunges across our gym turf and back. And people are just looking at this lady like, what the fucking hell's going on? And she's been with me almost 10 years. I've trained her whole family. And you get to a point where I don't have any form to fix with her, and I don't have any real nutrition stuff to dig into hard. We cover that stuff. And guess what? Then we got to talk about something else. So you need to have shit that's interesting to talk about with the people you're working with. I've got guys who I've had success coaching and keeping them going for the single reason that I used to play World of Warcraft and I know hockey stuff. And it was that connection that kept them coming and enjoying it, which got them through what they did not enjoy about working out.
Yep.
So you have to have some range and depth in your knowledge base.
100%.
I played World of Warcraft, which was
I did. Yeah, man. I now want to talk about World of Warcraft.
I played it.
Yeah.
It was actually I played during college, and it was and I played Warhammer, but it was a good way to like get bigger, like because I was like I played football, but I do that because I would just mindlessly, and so I could get the food in when I'm.
So you used Warcraft as a bulking tool. I like
absolutely.
that. I like that. But that's a really good point you made too, because you have to. Otherwise, you'll just be boring to yourself, and that is the biggest crime of all. Like you don't want to have like there's certain people that are so interested in fitness that that's all they want to talk about, which is cool, and they will attract a certain type of client. But for the most part, people want to train with people they like, and they want to train with people someone they can relate to, and these interests keep them engaged, and then you learn and they learn, and it's just the mutual enjoyment of your time together. Because we spend a lot more time with our clients than we do with our families.
Absolutely.
Said that to a client yesterday. And you guys, I don't know how much our listeners all know about Mark Fisher Fitness. And, you guys are, I kind of picture an average day. You guys are wearing tutus or unitards, and there's probably dildo stuck to the wall, or you guys are throwing them at. It's kind of like
dildo in this room
dodging.
Right now.
It's the Patches O'Houlihan scene from, what is it, Dodgeball. And I can see him like, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. Except you're at the front of the studio getting, cardio class, and you're hucking rubber dildos at the people who are trying to dodge them. But Mark Fisher Fitness is a Zadie fun. What is it?
This is your
Island of Misfit
toys.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not that far off the truth from what Mark
You're
was
not throwing
told me.
dildos at people's heads.
I throw them.
Okay.
I throw them at people. Yeah.
Okay, damn it.
At their feet, though, they got to dodge it. You know.
You're not throwing at heads like that would be
dangerous. No, they won't move.
But you think about this, like, what kind of person is interested in going to a class where like your instructor's dressed in a leotard and they're hucking dildos at you? It takes a special kind of person, but you create a community that I know that it's the theater community in New York for sure, which I understand Broadway has now been shut down until 2021, which is tragic. And you guys are a big part of the LGBTQ plus community in New York, and you create a safe space for that community there. And so you're going to have a lot of people who maybe they don't like, again, I said a moment ago, like the Island of Misfit Toys, or there's something that, Mark calls it, or the ninjas call it themselves. They've come up with a lot of the names for it.
Yeah. And
you have a unique culture there, but a lot of these people probably feel like, well, they don't necessarily fit into a traditional gym, but this place is where they fit into. So I don't know, like your thoughts on how Mark Fisher Fitness has created this culture.
Yeah, I think it really it grew out of, and that's the cool thing. It wasn't something that was planned, because you can tell when something's like manufactured to try to feel a certain way. It's like movies that you've that shitty movie with Superman and everybody in it.
Justice League.
Yeah, Justice League. That was garbage. and people that tell me that's their favorite superhero movie, those are only people I actually want to fight in person. But that it's something that just comes out of genuine enjoyment of doing the thing that way, and it will attract the people that also want to do it that way. And that's what I think MFF does really well, is we're just all weirdos, and we happen to work at the same place, and we're all weird in our own unique ways, which is cool. Like, you don't have to be weird. Like, I'm not an assless chaps guy. But there's jockstrap class, at MFF they do every now and then. That's not my journey, but there's people that are there for it and they want to do it. I'm more of the wear the dildo underneath a hat with a cape, and then, high five, but stuff like that. And everyone's just weird in their own unique way. And I think the thing that really sets MFF apart is they're making that like inclusive about their strangeness, their weirdness. And it's never like judgmental, which would turn people off. Right. And it's never unsafe, and it's never like forced. So the people that do it, we had one person that worked there, my friend Matt, he used to dress up like a cat in like a full bodysuit. He'd be a mime, a clown. And it was awesome. And we haven't been able to have someone like that since.
Yeah.
because that's uniquely him. And if we tried, it would be very false.
Where
It'd
did
be
you get?
forced.
I guess where did you grow into knowing that that's the kind of place you want to work at? Because like you said, you started at Cressy, which is just like that's like strength coach. Like I'm gonna do things this way for the rest of my life and
Yeah.
eat strength. Blah 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 blah. Like where does this? How do you get here? Like I know you kind of talked about it, but like that's a pretty big leap without knowing the whole thing, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had known about MFF, if
Yeah.
MFF existed and they were doing internships, I would have started there,
Yeah.
most likely. But how I got into the industry was I didn't have any knowledge. Like I worked out in the rec center at the gym, barely knowing what I was doing. I was just on T Nation and just figuring shit out. And then I saw the opportunity for an internship. I was like, I don't care what it, like, I don't know shit about baseball still. There were famous baseball players at Cressy's, and I had no idea who they were. Like Kevin Youkilis at the time was yeah. I think he's retired. I don't even know.
You's retired, yeah.
Okay. But he was in there at the time training. I just had no idea who he was, and everybody was nervous, and I don't know. And it wasn't until I knew who he was, I was like, oh, okay. Now I'm nervous because everyone else is nervous.
Well, Youkilis was part of the first Boston Red Sox championship team. I think it was the first one they won in 100 years. And they all had like long hair and beards. They were the anti-Yankees because the Yankees, of course, are not allowed facial hair other than this terrible mustaches, and they have to have their hair cut short. When Giambi went from the Athletics over to Yankees, they had to shave off the beard. And then, of course, the Red Sox, I think they had some nickname for themselves, and they had Johnny Damon. Johnny straight up looked like a caveman.
I wish I had the genetics for that beard, the beard life.
You're doing okay with a beard there.
Not that bad.
You're doing okay. Anyway, so yeah, I remember Youkilis. Youkilis is a classic Moneyball player. He was sort of undervalued, but he actually hit for good average and power, but he got on base. He took a ton of walks. And they built this really smart team out of like these lovable losers almost in a sense versus these pedigree, blue chip superstar types. And they broke that curse. I guess the curse of the Bambino when they traded Babe Ruth away.
I know that from Sandlot. That's why I know that.
And
you're like, how'd you get in there then, dude? Like,
I know it was all luck. Well, I found out about the internship from Kevin Larrabee on the FitCast, so I was like, I'll apply. And then I knew they were going to be at Mike Boyle's winter seminar. Yeah. So I drove from Michigan to the Massachusetts to meet like Pete and Tony, just introduce myself. So, because I had no experience, I was an English lit major, so there was no real reason for them to hire me. So I just showed up. I was like, hey, I applied for the internship. Just wanted to come learn, come meet you.
That's huge, all. Though. I think that's honestly like even just saying that if anyone hears that and like is bitching about their situation, you just put the groundwork in. Like that's
that's
like,
the only reason I got it. Definitely.
That's what most people do in other industries that like get those jobs. And like it seems like in fitness, it's like, oh, I got a certification. Like, no, dude, like you gotta want it. People know, like when you don't, like it's really easy to go get a cert, but it's obviously it's not easy to be that person. Like that probably experience was like, oh yeah, damn, this dude like drove and came to this thing. Like that's what we want. We can teach him the other shit. Yeah. That's probably what happened. I'm assuming.
Yeah, 100%. Thankfully they saw that because I didn't know shit.
Pete's got a sharp eye for that sort of thing. It's actually cool when you think about it, just how many notable people in our industry have come through the Cressy system. I'm not sure the timeline on if you would have overlapped with anyone. Obviously, Kevin Larrabee, the FitCast host, he was one of their earliest interns, if not their first. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, I think he was in the first class.
I think he was in the first class. And I know Sohee Lee was in there early on. Jordan Syatt did an internship there. And obviously guys like Greg Robbins and Tony Bombecchio, who were there for a long time and then went on to their own project at Strength House. And then there's probably people I'm just not even thinking of off the top of my head, but it's a fantastic program.
100%. I'm like so grateful for that experience because otherwise, I have no idea how I would have learned or how I would have I probably would have gone to like Bally's, Total Fitness, and then they would have shut down and I would have been like, what am I doing with my life?
There's a lot of luck involved in some of these things too, right? I mean, obviously the hard work to put yourself in that position, but you also benefit from luck too. Like I I don't know if I've ever told this story on air, but I got hired off the floor at the gym I was working out at. I moved cities, and I was getting back into my gym routine after a couple of years of just really being like out of a routine, out of a party lifestyle, went off track. And so I happened to have had a friend who went to the same gym I went to, who I knew from my work, and his trainer would see me around. And by this point, I'm a pretty big guy, pretty lean guy. And this guy would see me around. He'd keep asking me, hey, to come work there. I kept saying no. I'm like, this has more to do with sales and actually know what you're doing. And eventually I finally said yes. Anyway, so it just happened to be that's the gym I walked into first that I joined. Turns out that's the one that someone approached me off the floor. A decade later, like, shit, I'm writing for T Nation and we got this thing going on and hosting a conference. But also what happened is as I start reading T Nation, just like you, that every morning for breakfast, I'm reading T Nation early in my career, learning stuff. And I realize that, well, this Dean Somerset dude who writes for T Nation happens to be the same Dean Somerset who works at a different location of World Health, who is teaching continuing education courses. And like I said earlier, I've done a ton of his free and paid where I could coursework. And I've learned a ton from that. And that's just good luck having been in those particular places and starting it with that company. I mean, not many people in our broader universe who are listening to this got to work in a company where you get free education from that dude.
Oh yeah. And it's amazing. Like at Cressy Sports Performance, they had, or CP back then, they had like in-services, and I used to just come in and I'm like, all right, let me learn. Like I was reading you. Why would I not watch you in person? Who
did you get in-services with back then? Who were some of the people?
It was a lot of just Eric.
Which is sweet.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yep. I'm like, thank you.
Only Eric Cressy.
Only
Jesus.
Eric Cressy, the machine.
Still don't know shit about baseball.
I know. I literally, like, I tried, and then I realized I was like, I don't even care about baseball. Fuck it. And then it all left my brain. But I could appreciate how it, like, applied to what they were doing there, and that was beautiful. And just being able to make those connections and learn so much. It was just amazing first start. Like, it's hard to believe it's been 10 years now. More than 10 years.
Well, and that's kind of that whole idea of observing, like, people that are good at their craft. It might not necessarily be dildos on the wall, but there's something to be learned about, like, how they approach their niche and their systems that you can then see and appreciate in other stuff. Like, the dildos and baseball don't go together, but they kind of do. Like,
they definitely do.
I'll make another point too that's really important. When we're talking about Mark Fisher Fitness, and anyone who isn't super familiar with it, Mark is also brilliant and as well studied and versed in exercise physiology as anyone in our industry, right? And you see the personality. Mark is one of the most dynamic public speakers that I've ever witnessed, and great human being. But this man knows his technical shit too. It just happens that the brand is got a totally different aspect, but it's based in really fundamentally great exercise science and training principles.
100%. He like randomly, I'll catch him every like couple months. He'll just drop some random thing that I'm like, oh, you were paying attention way back then. Like I remember he brought up, what's his Chad Waterbury back in the day.
Oh, damn,
and I was like, oh yeah, I remember him. He had several haircuts. He had like the moppy haircut. Then he had the professional. Yeah.
Yeah.
He had like that 10 by 3 book.
Yeah.
And then he started, Mark knows his shit, but a lot of people they don't view him as a fitness expert in that regard.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. That means there's a lot more interests that he has other than that.
You guys
he can hold court with anybody when it comes to 100%.
You guys bring in like legit people too, like one of my buddies, Pat Davidson. Like how did that go? Did you go to that in-service at you guys?
Yeah,
like,
that was
totally not MFF, but like I would be interested to see how that went off there. But like that's high end stuff. Like you guys are learning legit shit.
Yeah, and I had never met Pat before. I was like, damn, he's fucking jacked. I forget how jacked people can get in the real world. Like, like that shit's that's a huge ass arm, man. Yeah, people can't see it, but
Andrew's flexing.
Damn. Oh, there we go. You got a pump and you're not even. I miss those days. You have.
Hey man, I made a home gym during all this, so I had to keep up.
That's smart. I've just been running, so my strength down, cardiovascular up.
But you know what? You get back in the gym. The moment you step back in, man, you're gonna have like newbie gains again.
Oh,
you can blow right the fuck back up.
I'm ready.
New York ain't ready.
They really aren't ready. The gyms are still closed. They are not ready.
And I understand it with New York because New York is a unique convergence of factors and population density. And, as much as I've been an advocate, and I really do believe that this is a very complex thing and people oversimplify it on both sides of it. And they've made this whole thing very ideological, left versus right, it's very Democrat versus Republican. But in the end, I still am a believer that we're probably going to be better off if we can get fitness facilities open with reasonable measures to keep people safe. Again, that relies upon people being reasonable, because I still think the net effect of having some social interaction, maintaining physical health is certainly both short-term and long-term going to be one of the best ways to avoid a worst case scenario outcome. And I do believe, especially for older adults, if you isolate for a very extended period of time, you limit your social interaction and you're not taking care of yourself physically, well, you're guaranteeing, a poor quality of life decline and an earlier death against the chance that maybe it happens. Again, complex conversation. And I know that New Jersey hasn't opened up. My Craig Yarnell, who's a guy I've met in the industry, and Craig is just nonstop on his social media freaking out at the governor in New Jersey, about what's going on. He's furious. But I do understand what's going on in New York, and I can see it from both sides. I do really hope there's a way to make this work. And I know with Mark Fisher Fitness, where you guys do group classes, and I think I think it's fairly small square footage relative to it's New
like
York,
a bigger
it's,
gym, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and there's going to be inherent challenges with that. Like, you get a whole bunch of people in that space breathing, the same air. So I respect the fact that that's not going to be an easy thing to figure out. But I really do hope that you guys get it open relatively soon, and that I know that the substance, the core behind Mark Fisher Fitness is a world-class quality product and group of people. So I believe that it'll thrive. This is a unique challenge.
100%. Yeah. And I get it. I get why things are still closed. It's going to be interesting to see how it all continues to play out over the next couple weeks and months, and who knows for how long, because I think as the further people get away from we're already pretty far from our normal, obviously, but the effects aren't known, like you were just talking about, like the social. Like I remember maybe it was March, May, mid-May, early June, when I got a package and I went to talk to someone about pick it up. And I was like, oh, I haven't talked to another human that wasn't someone in this house for so long. I kind of forgot how to talk to people. I'm like, that's an unknown effect. And there's people in their houses alone. They don't have their gym, their community. So I hope that things can open up soon, safely, and it's just going to be different. And I think we're going to learn as we go along what's best practices, what is not going to work at all, and we'll see.
Well, we're seeing a lot of people adapt to this. We're seeing a lot of brands are going to adapt and thrive, and unfortunately, we're going to see a lot of people there won't survive this. And it makes me very sad to see good companies and good people who just weren't able to make it through it because of the circumstances. I mean, we know that there are some companies like that were probably in rough shape leading into this, and all of a sudden they're announcing bankruptcies kind of early in this whole thing. It's like they were just hanging on. Maybe their business model had they couldn't keep up with the times. The greater presence of e-commerce, whatever, just got left behind, didn't stay current. And then those companies just got wiped out. I don't know if it's like 24 Hour Fitness went bankrupt. And I mean, I don't know the inner workings, but I mean, if they went bankrupt at the onset of this, then they weren't in good shape,
to
right?
begin with. Yeah.
No, they weren't in good shape to begin with. So there's something fundamentally going on there. And, GNC just went under. Right?
Oh, they did?
So they just announced bankruptcy. GNC announced bankruptcy.
Damn.
They're going to close a bunch of their stores. They're trying to restructure it so they can sell it. When you hear the word bankruptcy, it doesn't automatically mean, oh, the business is gone, everything's toast. It's a process to protect from creditors so that way they can try to restructure and try to survive. It doesn't usually work. But so GNC's done. Now, what am I thinking there? Well, it's probably a lot of these smaller brands and local stores. I've got 3 friends who own supplement stores. They're either part of a smaller chain or whatever, and I've got loyal to those places. I haven't set foot in and given business to a GNC in a very fucking long time.
Right.
And then of course you got online retailing like bodybuilding.com sell supplements, and T-Nation sell supplements, and we have Canadian versions too.
It's done. It's just sad, man. Sad day.
And it is sad to see these iconic brands go under, but sometimes this is stuff that was just accelerated.
Do they have
the
Popeyes?
Demise of something.
We got Popeyes here. That's bigger than.
Yeah. Do you guys have Popeyes?
Oh yeah, man, we got the Popeye sandwich. It took the world by storm.
Oh, you guys got the
You don't have the
Popeye's
sauce
chicken is the shiznit.
Was that your Smeagol?
If you've seen
Yeah.
Little, if you
that?
no, that's Little Nicky. I got a Smeagol too.
That was
If you've never
definitely
seen Little Nicky, oh man, I'm sorry. Oh, Master and heard us.
Oh,
says
Man,
he loves us.
that's Smeagol.
Smeagol cry.
How did you flip the fuck?
Yeah, no one's ever heard that before. I apologize sincerely for that.
How do you
if
get
anyone-
into that voice? Like you sit in your house, like you're like, oh man, I gotta
Yes.
learn this. You have to like do
Absolutely.
a lot of reps there.
The
I
fact
want
that
those to be-
no one's heard that before, I'm glad. If that's the only reason I came on here, damn it, that's my legacy.
It's the first time I've ever done that on air, and it probably will never happen again.
Yes,
You talk to your cat in the Smeagol voice, like that
All
like,
the
you're-
time.
You
that's the best. I literally have you seen the reunion they did
What's
on
that?
Zoom? The reunion they did on Zoom.
No.
It's they all the actors got back together to do scenes on Zoom, and they had the guy that did Smeagol. So
He's
He's
fantastic. Andy Serkis, yeah, he's great.
Mhm.
He's in he's Ulysses Claw in the Black Panther movie and some of the Marvel movies.
oh yeah, he's done so much. He's getting paid.
He's talented.
Yeah.
Well, damn, where do we go from Smeagol?
I'm
think-
done with it. I'm done with the
I wish we had
impressions.
somewhere to go full circle, but Andrew just like kind of threw that out there, and there's
Yeah, fuck that
I
shit
love
up.
it.
Cool. I don't know. I hope through all this, our listeners are just going like, all right, two things. One is like, what the actual fuck happened? And two is like, all right, that's actually a lot of really interesting stuff. That again goes back to my point that you need to be more robust. Now, I'm an advocate of very selectively consuming information to make your career better. I'm a big advocate of, putting a lot of time and effort into creating, right? Into building your brand, especially, if you've spent a bit of time in the industry, and not using consumption as a way to procrastinate, but soothe your, your soul and feel like you're doing something good that prevents you from actually getting your name out there and writing articles or creating YouTube or what have you. And social media is important, but it can't just be social media.
No.
So, I believe in all that, but at the same time, you've got to have interests outside of this stuff. And it's tough because it can't become an excuse just to mindlessly watch every bit of television
You
possible.
can watch Lord of the Rings. I think like people like that's like the people get mad at that shit. Like the people in the fitness, you need to grind and do all that stuff. Like go get a life. Like that's my first rule. It's like
I read those books as a kid. I love that stuff.
I just started reading them. They're fucking great.
which one's the Lord of the Rings?
The Hobbit, I just started.
Oh,
I finished
yeah.
The Hobbit. That's so good. I finished the
Hobbit's
first
probably
Lord
the
of the Rings
best one.
book.
I
The
know
second
everyone-
one, I hit a wall in. I'm like, I'm
It's a long
2/3
drawn-
of the way through the second one. I'm like, I need to power through.
It's heavier writing.
What's
Mhm.
hard
It's-
when the
it's
Hobbit
heavier.
is like it's a good intro and like it kind of is a kid's book, but it's really in depth. It's just
Yeah.
complete.
It's beautifully written.
Yeah, and then, so it's hard to go to those ones because it's very long. It's good.
Yeah.
Just the Hobbit's really good.
The Hobbit is almost a kid's book in a way.
Yeah.
It's a totally different style of writing, and it's a shorter book. And then the Lord of the Rings are very, very heavy literature. They're really great literary works. People forget that, yeah, it's fantasy fiction, but it's also, really, really good literature. And we don't have The Witcher. We don't have Game of Thrones. We don't have Dungeons and Dragons. And we don't have Harry Potter. We don't have any of these big pop cultural things without Lord of the Rings. That was the absolute grandfather of it all. And to a lesser degree, C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and that series. But yeah, if you haven't read Lord of the Rings, I think I've got two good reasons for you to do it. One is because it's iconic pop culture, and two, it's great literature.
Yeah.
If you want to expose yourself to great literature, there's an argument for that, and not just reading, the latest Mark Manson book. There's sort of you mentioned him. There's sort of a running joke with us that I actually hate the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. But I like a lot of stuff in that space. I like Brian Holiday's work. I like Seth Godin's work. Jocko Willink writes good stuff. On and on. Tons of really good personal development books in our space. There's tons of training books. There's tons of nutrition stuff. You should know this stuff. But if that's all you're doing, man, if you want to be a writer, you got to expose yourself to good stuff. Go read some. We're talking to John Romanello on here quite a while back, and he's a big devotee of Ernest Hemingway. You want to read great writing? Go read Hemingway. Go read John Steinbeck.
Yep.
Maybe go read some Orwell right now. That's kind of relevant.
The classics, like anything that stood the test of time, you'll get something from. Even if it's different than what other people get from it, that's fine. Doesn't matter what they get from it. Just take something away. Like Ralph Waldo Emerson, great.
Totally.
It's the shit. Oh,
You
Go
hear
look
that.
at some-
You hear that reference all the time with successful people,
Mhm.
right? Or Walt Whitman, like was it Leaves of Grass? Like just read shit like that. This stuff is
Yeah.
great
I
classic
haven't
work.
read any of those. I feel really.
As long as you, and that's the thing. Like some people, they don't know what to read to read, and they like ask for recommendations, and then they're like, oh, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like, just read only what you want to read until you like reading, then branch out from there.
reminds me
It's
of
a good
like
way to get
Spencer
started.
Nadolsky's meme. It was like, I'll do anything for fat loss, and then it's like Meatloaf. It's like, I won't do that. It's like some people ask for recommendations. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna read that. Like, what the fuck did you ask? Like, you want
Read
my
some-
answer or not?
Consume something that you enjoy, that you're genuinely interested. I mean, if fucking you want to go and you like vampires, you
It's
want to
like
go
you
read
don't
Anne
know, you
Rice
don't
novels,
know.
go read Anne Rice novels.
You don't
Yep.
know. You don't know. Like,
Yep.
like at least try it. Like, try anything once. It's like maybe not a dildo with the face, but
Maybe.
like,
I think-
maybe.
I think that is a Mark Fisher fitness policy, is like try anything once.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like get over the legal disputes. It's like, hey, they said they're good to go.
I said it.
There's probably some
Oh.
very unique language in your guys' waivers.
I haven't even looked at it, but I'm glad people signed it.
You signed. They probably like, you should go read your agreement, dude. You don't
We
even
did-
know what you signed.
We did sign agreements. I just don't know what they said. I was like, all right,
Like, I'm in.
yeah, I'm here. Please let me in.
Wait, okay, let's wrap this up. Where do people find you? I know you said you're not much on the Instagrams, but like, if they want to consume all stuff Rog Law.
RogLawFitness.com is my website. I'm on Facebook, Rog Law, Instagram, Rog Law Fitness. Yeah, most of the stuff like I post is about my interests, some fitness stuff, a lot of mindset stuff. So enjoy what you may. If you like it, cool. If you don't, there's plenty of other people out there for you. Plenty of other good people.
And I'll say this to our listeners too. If they already know who you are, then great. They understand why you're on here. If they don't know you as well as I have over some time, then go and follow what you're doing and try to pick up and absorb a little bit of it, because you're not, the stereotypical trainer in the industry, right? There's a lot more. There's certainly a lot of substance there, and it's a diverse array of interests and personality. And again, just expose yourself to more people in the industry. And like, I can't remember, Dean, I think maybe it was you said earlier, like, don't be a shittier version of someone else. And don't just like, and I certainly think, don't just marry yourself to one person being your idol and try to follow their path. My career is an amalgamation of learning from a lot of people and absorbing pieces, but that it's still true and unique to me. So I hope anybody who's following this, who's trying to grow a brand and get their name out there, they're taking a look at the people we've pulled onto this podcast. And I mean, not everybody can be Martin Rooney. And quite frankly, it's hard. I would be exhausted for trying to be Martin for 10 minutes.
On stage, he's the best.
Oh God, he's amazing in person presenting. Fuck, he's wild. And he's in great shape too. But you got to find your own path. But honestly, you can pick pieces from people, and then you can learn a lot from all these resources. And I think that people can take a lot from your presence in our industry too, even if you, by your own admission, you have a bit of an understated presence here. And if someone's interested, you have appeared on other podcasts, so they can pull more of your thoughts out of things. You've got FitCast appearances, the very least, and it's just an easy search for that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then, guys, if you're enjoying this, I mean, we've talked to Mark Fisher a couple times. Dean on The Pump has had Harold Gibbons on, and we've got some of your guys' community. Robbie Farlow did a podcast with us quite a ways back. Go check that out. He's a really fun dude. And we talk a lot about, interests outside of fitness industry on that one. So thanks for taking the time to come talk to us. This has been a long time in the making, and I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Yes. Thank you so much for reaching out to make this happen. I appreciate it. Appreciate y'all. Thanks for the opportunity. It was so fun. And I'm glad we got the Smeagol out of you. Yeah,
I was going to say, we brought you all the way out here to talk about movies and Tekken and the Smeagol impressions. No fitness.
That's right.
All right, boys.
Shut up and sit down.